Hey everybody, this is Mike, sound engineer and overall technical guy behind this Filipino American Life. So the subject of this show is mental health, and as a complex and potentially very heavy topic, it took us a couple of conversations and recordings before we really covered all the ground that we wanted to for this show. And so we had to piece together this episode from a couple different recordings. And so it might seem a little uneven at times, but we think we put together a good show. But you be the judge. Enjoy.
My secret, just do something that ain't nobody ever done before, but make it sound like something that's always been there forever.
Welcome to This Filipino American Life, a podcast that explores the experiences of Filipinos in the United States. My name is Elaine Delales. With me is our fellow co-host,
Joe Bernardo
and Ryan Carpio.
Hi guys.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Yeah.
Pew, 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 pew.
Pew, 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 pew. So this is our second podcast.
Yay!
We
Number
made it.
two.
We
Number
made it.
two.
We are officially
Wait, that's gross.
Number two.
Thank you to everyone who has listened. Thank you to everybody who has liked our Facebook page. If you haven't, we have a Facebook page, This Filipino American Life. You can go ahead and like us. Thanks for folks who messaged us. The Teenage Filipino Skinhead. That was rad.
Who is the Filipino teenage Filipino skinhead?
So there is a Facebook group called I Was a Teenage Filipino Skinhead. And it's this guy who talks about his experience in the 80s in the mod ska scene. So he makes zines about it and he talks about it. So
not white supremacists.
Not white supremacists.
Okay.
No.
I think Jesus.
No. And then also thank you to Blonde Mary from Instagram. She's in New York. She messaged me about that we did a good job with the
nice.
podcast.
Oh, and a big shout out to Glenn Dake and Filiberto Gonzalez, non-Filipinos who enjoyed our podcast.
Oh, totally.
Sweet.
Yeah. I can't think of the... Thank you to the ones that listened, mostly my family.
That's because you didn't do anything.
I did. I
You just talked and that's it, and me and Elaine did all the work. Never mind.
I should do more.
Yeah, you should do more besides abstinence. So our subject in this episode is going to be therapy, mental health. This past month was actually Mental Health Awareness. And it's also Asian Pacific Heritage Month. So a lot of these things aligned since we're Filipino American, and mental health is something that our community doesn't really talk about. So I wanted to bring that up because it's an important resource. And our guest today is a good friend, Ernest Tamayo.
Hi.
Ernest Vid.
Ernest Vid.
Yes.
Is this short for Ernest Video?
I wish. I always hope my parents name me after Vid Kid from Burger King, but no.
Dope. So Ernie is, he also goes by Ernie. Can you share what you do? What you want to share about? Yeah.
Okay. Well, right now I work at the Asian Pacific Women's Center, and I'm the transitional shelter program coordinator. So what I do is provide primary case management to all the families who live at our shelter, and then also provide case management, counseling, and then if it's necessary, therapy if the families prefer to have a male therapist. Because right now we only have female therapy staff.
Okay. And then what is your background in therapy?
Well, I went to USC to get my master's in social work. Mm-hmm. So our first year during the USC program is all clinical. So we do all early interventions, primary interventions, then it's all therapeutic modules and stuff like that. So your second year, you can either stay in the mental health focus. Mm-hmm. I decided to go in a little bit different field, but the whole time while you're there, therapies and therapies are, a big aspect of what you're learning while you're there.
So why is this something that we're talking about, and how does it connect with the Filipino American experience? G. Tonji from Kababayan, LA last year actually did a show about depression. I wish I had seen it when it came out in September of 2015, but it covered a lot of the topics that we've been sharing about, why we're talking about mental health. And so it's on YouTube, and it's a show on depression and suicide. So we'll post it on the website when we post this episode, so you all can see it and catch it. It's like in 4 segments. But for me, so I work in student affairs, and so that means I work in university setting. And when I was in graduate school, I worked at Asian Pacific American Student Services, and they have a program called PEER, which is Positive Experiences Enriching Relationships, so student mentoring. And the program was created because Asian American students have the highest rate of suicides on campus. So that to me was very touching because it referred back to my own experience. Because when I was in college, I had an episode with depression that I didn't know was depression until I got to grad school, where I could point out what was happening to me. There was a short spurt in college where I could not get out of bed. I couldn't, like, it took the ever living life in me to get out of bed to go to class. And when I would go to class, I would just sit there and zone out and not pay attention. And I would get home and I would sleep, and I would, no joke, sleep for probably 20 hours.
20 hours.
Like I would miss all my alarms. I wouldn't go to, I'd probably go to only 1 class, even though I had like 3 classes. And I would just then like wake up and do nothing. So it was complete. I basically had like a depression episode. And at the time I thought to myself, like, now looking back on it, I should have gone to therapy. I should have gone to counseling services, but I felt like I had to handle it by myself, which is a very like Filipino American thing, to think that you have to handle this yourself. I couldn't go to anybody. I didn't want to call my parents because there was like a shame aspect that I was there in college and I needed to handle this. I was grown up. So when I experienced that and I saw that this program existed, like I worked on it. I was, as a graduate assistant, I was in charge of, that was one of the programs I had to work on. So I got to see how doing that mentorship program, which was a bridge to therapy. So the students who are mentors are trained by postdoctoral students at the counseling and psychological services at USC. So they have like, they crash course in what therapy and like in services and resource help is, but they're not therapists. We all know that, but they're there as a resource for a first year student. So I thought that was really meaningful because I thought, oh, if I had that, I would have known what to do. So that is why I feel so importantly about this subject and why we should talk about it, because it's something that it doesn't get talked about. We don't. And then even in Tonji on her Kababay in LA show, she talked about it a lot. How like people think like, no, we got to sweep it under the rug. Like no one needs to see this. You know. How about you guys?
I think for the same exact reasons as you, like we don't talk about it enough. I think, at least especially in my life, it's never talked about. Like mental health, everything should be swept under the rug, and everybody should be fine. And growing up, I always thought like, you know, going to therapy, those are just white people problems. You know? And anyway, yeah, we just don't talk about it. And I remember, you know, growing up, there was a study that was done. It came out down in San Diego that the highest suicide rate among women in San Diego were Filipinas, and that, you know, it really kind of alarmed the community and alarmed, you know, especially folks in San Diego, and a lot of you know, mental health services or you know, some resources were kind of geared towards Filipinos because everyone was surprised by it. You know, I think as Filipino Americans and, you know, somewhat Asian Americans, we're still kind of stigmatized as a model minority in some ways. And, you know, people don't realize that it does, mental health does affect our community. And, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know much about it, like all the nuances of kind of mental health and, other than kind of the stuff I read on the internet. But, yeah, I just think it's an important subject to talk about.
And for me, it's, you know, there's something really specific about being Filipino American. My family, for example, not being born here, there's kind of a different, like culturally speaking, there's a different approach to things. I've actually been in touch with a friend one of my good friends, roommate, his name is Joseph Serrano. He's out in Chicago, so give him a quick shout out. But he's a clinical psychologist. He's working on a dissertation about, how to use therapy differently. But he and I had a conversation about, Filipino Americans, what is it about the difference in culture? And he brought up something really interesting. And we were growing up we were taught to have a collective mentality about stuff. There's the bayanihan spirit, and there's the, understanding your neighbors and going for help with, to people that and kind of trusting this collective spirit. And in the States, it's kind of different. Like, you're taught that your individuality is kind of like important, and talking about yourself is important. So the sweeping under the rug part that we know about, being here, it's a little bit different. No. Let's talk about what's ailing you. For most of us, at least my parents, right? There's a lot of like suffering in silence. Like, I don't think I've probably seen my dad cry maybe 6 times in my life. But just that idea of like everything's gonna be fine, everything's gonna be okay. Versus something, I'm probably the only person who's like, oh, let's talk about this. And everyone's like, shut up, dude. Stop talking about stuff. You're so weird. But I'm the weird one. So, and I think it's just kind of, just understanding that there's a difficult kind of threshold there. So I imagine for us, like this generation of folks, there definitely needs to be a conversation about it, and not just a conversation about it, but a way for us to give each other resources, or letting people kind of understand that, hey, this is okay, and we can discuss, and we can help out in that way. So that's how I kind of think how pertinent it is to the Philam community out there. And now understanding a little bit of the statistics, my goodness, I'm even more like, yeah, we should definitely talk about it. So,
Joe, Ryan, Ernie, what are things that you do for relaxation for your own therapeutical purposes?
I play basketball.
Okay.
That's like an important therapeutic exercise for me. I also lately I've been got into boxing.
Ooh.
Like, I bought gloves, and then I go to the gym, go to LA Fitness, and then I hit the bag. But then I totally get intimidated by people who know what they're doing, because I just like watch YouTube videos and then try to like emulate them.
Hey, do what you gotta do. You do you.
True.
Yeah.
Ryan?
What relaxes me? I like to drive. I don't like being stuck in traffic, but I like to drive. Like long distances, like to the valley. No,
I thought you were gonna say Las Vegas.
It's not that far, dude.
That's a distance.
No, but I actually, kind of, there's a certain piece to it, because I'm by myself. One, I don't like being by myself. I usually get a lot of my energy from other people, and so when I was forced into being by myself, like usually when I'm driving somewhere, I end up thinking a lot. And when I was younger, it's probably like listening to music and singing along with it and stuff like that. But more and more, I'm just using it as a time to either.
So you drive in silence?
Actually, yeah.
Wow.
I decompress. It's really odd, because I find myself not turning on the radio. So in high school, it would always be like, radio, music.
Power 106.
Or 90.3 Theo. And then after college, a lot of NPR. And I was like, okay, this is cool.
But that's depressing too, dude.
Right? And then probably, maybe I would say about 10 years ago or so, it started to be a little bit more like just being by myself. I just shut off the radio. It was weird, because it was me thinking alone, and that was kind of.
But it calmed you.
It totally calmed me, and
great.
I've done a couple of just long drives with friends, even just to see if I actually really liked it. And I've taken my car all the way up to Vancouver. I've taken it to Santa Fe,
What?
New Mexico. And
Really?
You did those
Yeah.
drives
That's cool.
silently?
Not necessarily, but there's definitely some moments in there where it's just like it's just a weird thing. But I've realized that it's something kind of therapeutic for me.
You get in the zone.
Yeah, you get in the
Auto
zone. Brought to you by.
Sorry, it's there. I couldn't help it.
So that's one thing, and I also like to sing and all that. It used to be
Can we
basketball.
get a
for me,
sample?
too. No.
Come on. Sample.
Wait, did you ever just drive just to drive, or you had a destination in mind?
Most of the time I have a destination.
Oh, okay.
I've had moments where I'm like, I'm just gonna go drive. So I've done that. Usually on my birthday, for a few years
On
ago.
your birthday?
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, oh, it's my
Whoa.
birthday. I'm gonna take the day off. I'm just gonna drive.
I'm gonna pollute the earth.
Wow.
That's some Kerouac stuff right there.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
weird. It's so weird. But again, for those that know me, I hate traffic. So it's not the same thing. Like being in traffic is not the same thing that I'm meaning with this. But usually it's like, okay, I'm gonna take a drive. It's gonna be
So you're gonna go on the 10 at like 2 in the morning when no one's on the freeway?
maybe not. Like I'm gonna go visit Joe all the way up there and think. No, but it's relaxing. I think. Because like the other parts of me aren't really relaxing. Usually, if I'm spending with friends, it's like interaction and it's fun, but it doesn't necessarily relax me. It keeps me
Yeah.
active. So
For me, it's lately it's been lettering, so I'm all really into. I buy
cool.
I do like hand lettering, brush lettering, also coloring, which is why I do the coloring events in Los
cool.
Angeles. Color
Yeah.
Your Troubles Away.
When's the next one?
June 28th, 24th. Let me get my calendar.
No, it's okay. We could plug it in later.
Plug it later, but yeah, it's later in June. But I do coloring as therapy because it's like it's like mindless and you get into the zone with the color zone. That sounds weird.
AutoZone.
AutoZone. And so you just vibe out with coloring. So that's what I do. And adult coloring is a trend right now, but it's a good trend in my head because like pop culture coloring, do your thing.
I've still not gone. I'm gonna go next time.
You better.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
It's gonna be at the Park's Finest, so you can eat barbecue
Okay.
Yay.
and drink beer. But yeah, that's my thing. What about you, Ernie?
I've been doing very similar things. Like I box at this boxing gym in Eagle Rock, so I spar. I do like sparring classes and with instructors and take classes and whatnot. So that's been probably the biggest change in terms of how I look at things that relax me. You know, because that's not really a relaxing thing to do. You know, getting hit in the face hurts, right? But I think it's the feeling you get after it. I think that's like for a lot of things you guys are talking about. It's that feeling afterwards of like kind of release. And then even with the driving thing, I totally agree with that. I think driving in silence is beautiful. So, I know a lot of people hate it. Like my wife will be driving somewhere, and it may be a 30-minute drive, and then I'll turn the music down until we can just chill. And she's like, she'll turn the music up. I'm like, why? What's wrong? Are you uncomfortable? Like, we're married, right?
Yes.
But I think it's things like deep breathing and everything. It's like so important that you don't even realize. And then when you have time when it's just quiet and you're able to like hear your own breath, like it can really make you feel a lot better.
Yeah, I used to do that Sunday mornings when the house was really quiet. I would like journal the week and write like goals and stuff. I haven't done that in a while, but it would be complete silence. Like the TV wouldn't be on or anything like that. But now like I don't do that as much, but my meditation is like watching documentaries and like riding the exercise bike.
Yeah.
There's a certain it's like there's this Buddhist principle of like nothing. Like when you get to the zone of nothing, that's when you're like full at peace or something. And I used to swim maybe like 6 years ago. I would go swim at lunch, and my goal was to swim laps until I could think I felt nothing. Like all the static in my head would be gone because I would just be concentrating on my breath, not drowning, and the strokes. Not that kind of stroke, but but there would be points when I would get there, and I would.
You could feel that high.
I would feel that high, and then I would be like, yes, but then I would pull myself out of that feeling because I was saying yes, like I did it. But a lot of the things, like when I'm trying to find peace, is I'm chasing that feeling. Like I'm chasing the calm, the empty space, because that's when like I'm not thinking about like, what are we going to do for the next podcast, or what am I going to make for dinner tomorrow, or I don't know, will I have gas money, all these things, like it's all gone. So that's what I chase when I'm trying to find peace.
It's cool. My work has at work they have half-hour meditation classes every week.
That's dope.
Yeah,
I want to do that.
I love where I work.
I can tell you right now, there's no such thing as that where I work.
I think on campus we have that, but I haven't taken advantage of it.
I went to the first one this Wednesday, and like it was guided meditation.
Yeah.
The instructor totally just told us
Did you
what to
get in
think
the
about.
zone?
I got in a zone, but then I also I dozed off. I was like in and out of sleep. It was weird.
Sometimes it's
There's
okay.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
though. Because if your body's not in the proper state to address your mental health, you can't address it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You just can't. Like if you're sleep deprived or if you're malnourished, you can't. Oh, let me go to therapy and I'll feel better. No, you have to sleep. You have to eat.
Yeah. Take care of the physical and the mental.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, one has to come before the other.
They do Tai Chi on campus.
Oh, that's cool.
And I forget. Sometimes I did it a couple of times. And it's really like the movement. You have to be all. It's so slow, and I'm very like man, like gotta do it, like high energy. But then to be
Like all Filipinos are super high energy.
High energy. Jocelyn Enriquez. High energy.
Like I guarantee you, we're doing this now, but each and every one of you are thinking about what you're gonna do tomorrow already.
Probably. Actually,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I gotta earn it.
Every Filipino's like
Oh
that.
my gosh.
it's always like you gotta plan ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's what we do for therapy.
I
Yeah, I guess.
I'd also do crossword puzzles.
Oh yeah.
I forgot
You always
Oh.
do weird crossword
Well,
puzzles.
that's
all the
my-
time.
that's
Yeah.
my
That's what
smoke
Mike
break.
does.
Yeah, on my
Mike did crossword. Oh, he used to.
as
Crossword
at
puzzles
work,
are
everybody's Monday through Wednesday. I do it pretty quickly. But
Really?
Yeah,
Damn.
it gets out.
I
No, but
need to do
because
that.
everybody has a smoke break, or if people smoke at work, I'm like, I want a smoke break. So on my smoke breaks, I take a
Crossword puzzle break.
But it relaxes me, so it's cool.
I walk at lunch now. Like I'll eat like 15 minutes before 12 and then take a little 1 mile, try like a mile and a half stroll around campus
Oh, that's cool.
to get in the zone.
My work offers martial arts classes
What?
and like the therapy and kickboxing classes during lunch. And that's what I
What?
do. It's awesome. I love working there.
My gosh. So now we know that Joe has an awesome workplace.
Well, I mean, I think it's maybe trend is not the right word, but I think people are noticing more and more ways to kind of get in touch with the whole body, right? Whereas, like especially in the workplace where people can actually have a break or a chance to relax or even a way to start thinking differently about health. I think that's pretty awesome because for a long time, my mental health was always pretty much attached to either my family or my religion or going to church or that's kind of like I think I've talked to Joe about this. Like my therapy is like going to weekly mass. That's how you get your dose of like something a little bit beyond me and existential, a little bit outside of the body kind of thing.
I've
So-
heard that from other Filipinos that they take church as their break from life. Like it's
Yeah.
their time to be in a space for 1 hour. They don't have to think about anything. They just have to follow the mass.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just about, it's just the space, right? The space that you need to be able to talk, and that someone's listening to. So, when you talk about talk therapy, same thing. You're talking to somebody who's going to listen to you about stuff that you want to talk about. So
Yeah.
I think so. I think priests are like that. I went on a retreat a few years ago. I hadn't been on a retreat in so long. Like, and this was like a personal choice retreat. It wasn't like one of those things like, hey, you have to go on a retreat for confirmation or high school.
Yeah.
The last before the one I went to in 2014, the last one I went to was in senior year of high school.
Did you go to Kairos?
I went to Kairos,
Kairos.
right? And but the one I went to, my goodness, like it was really a space to just kind of explore, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. It was a 4-day retreat.
Wait, is it for single folks or is it for?
Did you find a girlfriend?
No.
This
I
is
found
Ryan's
friends.
therapy right now.
I found friends. No, it wasn't for married, single. That didn't matter. It was for folks who are looking to kind of connect with their faith, etc. Right, and so we was out somewhere in San Diego, I think, or Carlsbad or something like that. 4 days. It was pretty awesome. A lot of meditation, a lot of breathing. it was
sounds cool.
It was really cool. So it changed a little bit of perception to me, or for me, about, the word that we use, therapy, all the time. And we do it in so many different ways, right? Just today, just right now, we talked about what things relax us.
Yeah.
To some people, it's yoga. To some people, it's prayer.
Yeah.
To some people, it's meditation.
To some people, it's boxing.
Exactly.
Or,
To some people, it's boxing.
Yeah.
So
Well, given the subject that we're talking about, like what are all our experiences with therapy? Because or the first impression with therapy. So I'll start because it's a touchy subject and I'm the one who wanted to talk about it. I've been in talk therapy 3 times in my life. Once
Talk therapy is when you just
talk therapy is when you talk to like a therapist. So my first time was in graduate school. I was having a hard time processing doing graduate school because I'm a first generation student and first generation graduate student. So it's like there's all these difficulties and I didn't know how to do X, Y, and Z. So I was having a lot of anxiety and stress. And I would talk to my cousin, who's a marriage family therapist, actually. And I would be like, Ate, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if this was the right idea. And she was like, you know what? You should talk. There's a counseling center on your campus. You should take advantage of it. So I went to the USC Counseling and Psychological Services, and I saw a therapist throughout the duration of my experience in grad school. So that was really helpful to me because it was my first time doing it. And then postgraduate school, I had anxiety in terms of like loans and expectations and what am I supposed to do. So I went to a therapist at Kaiser for it was like a licensed social worker that they had contracted. So I talked to that person for a few times and then I just petered out. And then I talked to my current, I haven't seen my therapist in a couple of years, but my therapist, Joanna, it was a referral. And I remember at the time I was looking for Asian American or a Filipino American therapist, and I was looking through the network, and I couldn't find one. Mm-hmm. In my health network, I was putting in Asian American, Filipino American, and I found one person, but you had to be a referral from somebody else, and they only had an office in LA, but they weren't there all the time. So at that point, I was like, I can't handle this anymore. I just needed to find somebody. So I got a referral from a friend, and she was in Westwood, and so I saw her for many, many years, and I haven't seen her in a while, but because I think I'm better, and I think I'm better. I process things a lot easier. But that is my experience with therapy, and I've actually was prescribed Xanax for anxiety, but my cousin talked me out. My cousin, who's a doctor, I told him how I had anxiety, and I was like, hey, my doctor prescribed me Xanax. Should I do this? Because even then I had apprehension on taking Xanax. And my cousin was like, I think you should just do talk therapy instead. He was saying in the emergency rooms where he worked, he saw a lot of people come in with prescription drug abuse, specifically Xanax, because you have breathing trouble. So people would pass out. So I was like, oh, well, now I'm scared. So I didn't even fill the prescription because I was like, I didn't want to do that.
Did you have any hesitation in kind of going through therapy in the first place?
Yeah,
I
did. Do you have that with your clients?
Everybody has a taste for therapy.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and that crosses cultural boundaries. That's everyone looks at therapy in their own unique way. But Asians and Filipinos specifically, you don't find that many Filipinos wanting to do therapy.
No.
Yeah. I actually did a couple kind of talk therapy sessions. This is when I was kind of ending graduate school, and I think a lot of it was just the weight of graduate school and kind of the anticipation of what's going to happen next, and kind of identity shift, not doing academia anymore, kind of caused me to have anxiety. And then I went to a couple of therapy sessions, but I couldn't find anybody that I liked, so I just stopped going.
It's hard.
Yeah, I didn't
like dating.
Yeah, and I didn't find anybody who knew that life of a
were you
PhD
explaining
graduate.
your cultural and your experience?
And the thing is, I just didn't want to explain it.
Yeah.
I just wanted someone to know it already. And it's hard to find anybody who knows that, especially if I've read a lot where therapy or mental health is kind of a taboo subject in Asian American, Filipino American communities. But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. What about you, Ryan?
My experience is not how do I say this? It's not my own, I guess. I've never been to talk therapy. I've never outwardly kind of gone to somebody, but I also know that there were moments in my life where I'm like, I probably need to talk to somebody, or want to. I think there is, you can just feel it, right? There's some moments where, maybe how you guys felt a little bit of anxiety or uncertainty about stuff. So in my life, it's just always been different. I've always looked at therapy very weirdly, and not so much that it's taboo, but I think growing up, I always thought of it as like really expensive.
Yeah.
As something as like, I always thought, oh, therapy, going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or a counselor, whatever it may be, is something that rich people did. I'm not rich. I can't do that. So that's how I thought of it. That's how I grew up with it. And I think I also grew up in a pretty big family, and so looking for kind of like that person to talk to is usually like within my family.
Yeah.
Again, there's shortcomings there and shortfalls there as well, and definitely no one's gonna give me all the advice that I need or anything like that, but I've had some really good friends who needed it, who went through it, who had counseling, like really, really good friends that were going through some stuff that me as a friend, I couldn't do anything about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so definitely touches everybody. I think it definitely touches people that I've been close to or know. But again, it's almost like, how do you access it? Like, Elaine, you were looking for somebody that you were going to be comfortable with, and it was difficult.
Yeah.
So, and for Joe, you were looking for somebody that you didn't have to explain stuff to. So I think it's just hard. I think the thought of going through it is, at least to me, is hard. I've thought about it, and then I'm like, maybe not. I'm like, I'll talk to somebody else.
I think the point for me where I kind of just decided to go through therapy was the fact that, like, I think I've bored, or I think my friends were just sick of sick of like
You're
me
ranting?
sick of listening to a lot of my problems. I know Girly was, and my wife, and other folks are probably like just sick of. I don't say they're sick of it. They're just like,
But they didn't know how to help you.
they don't know how to help me, and
Yeah.
I think they also didn't go through the same experiences as
Yeah.
me, so it's hard for them to relate.
I know I shared with my dad that I was going through therapy, and my dad's reaction was, "Why do you need to do that? Why do you need to talk about your problems to somebody else?" And his reaction was, "You can just go to the shooting range and shoot guns. You can just shoot your problems." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I don't want to do that." But I could tell for him, it was like a. I think it's an issue with a lot of Asian Americans, Filipino Americans. Like, you don't want to talk about your problems. There's this thing about like
like the machismo.
Yeah.
It's like a big deal with like Asians and Latino Americans coming in like for therapy. So like when we're doing like offering parenting classes and we have families come in who are mandated by the courts because of certain issues, right? It's usually the mothers who are more open to it, and a lot of the fathers will be like a lot more hesitant. But what's great about things like that is when they do come in, they may not understand it, and they have this preconception like, this is about weakness. I should be able to take care of this myself. And by the end of like the third class, they'll be the ones talking the most, because it'll go into like, we'll talk about things like, what happened to you in your past? What do you feel like is good parenting? How did your parents parent you? And it'll go really deep. And these are our very initial questions. And then there'll be the ones being like, I didn't realize that. You're right. My dad taught me how to do it this way, so this is why I do it. But when I look back, I don't even agree with that, and I'm doing it now. Like those are the type of things that come up in like therapeutic sessions that you won't even think about. And going back to what your dad said about going to the shooting range, those would be one of the things like we suggest. Like if someone came in with like stress or anxiety, or let's say, or whatever coming in.
Operate a gun.
Right. Well, we would say like, okay, what brings you release? Like, what do you find relaxation?
Oh, and if they
in?
say like shooting, you
say
go, like,
shooting, or if they say, hopefully we want to say like, oh, I want to go swimming. Like, you should be going swimming. You know, but we try to find those type of things where they find relaxation. You know, so relaxation techniques are like one of the big things like a lot of therapists do, because number one, they're trying to relieve anxiety, and they're having anger management. Like, how do you release that anger without having like a violent end? You know, so shooting would make sense.
Because you're shooting a target, not a person.
You're shooting a target. You're not shooting you're not shooting whatever caused that pain. Expressing it in some way.
Have you ever treated the certain stigma for therapy is that it's only for upper and middle class white women? Have you ever treated folks like that, or have you talked to folks like that?
I've always worked in a nonprofit setting. So all of my or nonprofit or government, right? So all of my clients who came in have always been like mandated by the courts, or they're mandated by DCFS. So the reason they're going to us because their insurance we accept their insurance, or we'll offer free services for certain type of people, right? If they bring in certain paperwork, or the courts will pay for it. I mean, I have a lot of classmates who work with like upper, let's say like financially more stable people in like private practice. Private practice works more like that, you know? But even those folks, like, they're still using their insurance. Maybe they're offsetting the cost if it costs too much, and the insurance won't cover everything, but almost everyone will have access to therapy.
I think a lot of people don't realize that their medical insurance also includes therapy.
Right.
Because I didn't realize it either. And my copay was only $20. Like, my first 3 sessions were covered by my insurance, and then my copay was $20. But I work at UCLA, so like my insurance is great, but like I have other friends who are like independent contractors, like self-employed. Like, their copay, mine was $20 a session, and then their copay would be like $100 a session. So on that level, like, it really is like there's ways to find it. It's just a matter of like, are you willing to do it for like the cost, which is sad that you have to like factor in like cost into your mental health. Because like if you're sick, like when you get a cold or you have the flu, you go to a doctor to get medicine. But like you were saying with your emotional mental health, you don't think to go to a doctor to talk to somebody.
Right. I mean, you don't know right away. You know, like you think I can't sleep, I'm not eating, my boyfriend broke up with me, I lost my job, I'm living at home, like, okay, I don't want to get up in the morning, you know, like I don't want to talk to people. I mean, those are all signs of depression. Like you're hitting certain factors, but you don't know these things. You know, if you're sneezing and you have a headache, then you know you're sick. But you know, for mental health, it's hard. Like one thing you guys were saying was like you're just trying to take it on yourself. You're like, I don't want to burden my friends, right? Like so maybe I got to the point where like you're like, oh, I don't want to burden them, or you know. But I think with mental health, like it really takes that point where like you don't know what to do, you have no other options, so you feel like I have to do this, which is sad. But sometimes for a lot of people, like that's what has to happen before they accept assistance for mental health.
Yeah. Let's take a break because it's been a little heavy. So we'll take a break right now, and then we'll just talk about something else. Ernie, how did you get into this work? Like, how did you find yourself? So my history with Ernie is that I've known him since UC Irvine, so our undergraduate days. And I was a senior when Ernie was a freshman. And I used to call him my favorite freshman. He's still my favorite. Just kidding.
Just not a freshman anymore.
Just not a freshman. But Ernie, how'd you do this? Like, I would never have expected this path for you, so I'd like to know. How did you,
Well, you know, like while at UCI, like we're super involved with like the Filipino stuff, all the clubs, you know, Filipino education, you know, activism, you know, like political advocacy. So after undergraduate, you know, I started working at SEPA. Like I was like the after school program coordinator, so running all the programs.
SEPA
is Search to Involve Filipino Americans. So I mean, it was a great program. And I kept thinking like, okay, where am I going to go from this? You know, like program development. And so when social work became an idea that I started thinking about, it made sense to me because I wanted to address like root causes of things, because once you get a kid when he's like middle school and high school, like a lot of things are ingrained in that individual that are hard to change at that point, And plus, I didn't have the tools to change that. I was an interactive guy. I tried to be a positive role model, but I didn't understand how I could really like have an impact on a lot of these kids. So going to social work, I said, okay, let me check out social work because I felt like it was a grassroots way to like really like affect the community and individuals. And so once I got there, and then I didn't realize how much therapy and counseling and all these models are almost like 50 to 70% of social work, what they want you to take out of it, So I always knew I wanted to stay in the Asian American community. I always knew I wanted to take whatever I learned from USC back to the Asian community. So, it just kind of how it just came about because I knew addressing mental health would have a long lasting impact on individuals, which would impact their families, which would impact our community. So that's how it kind of came about.
Do you ever see some of the SEPA kids now?
I do, and it's crazy seeing SEPA kids. One of them, you guys know Dominic.
Oh yeah,
he's a manager now at the Eagle Rock Jollibee.
We've seen him,
right? So,
cool. And we wanted to harass him, but he was busy working, so we
he is busy.
Hi Dom, if you listen. Hi.
Hey Dom, thanks for the chicken joy.
Did you get a chicken joy out of that?
Dude, we went there with my wife, and then I'm like, oh, what's up, man? I didn't know I knew he worked at Jollibee, but he got,
Dude, we should have done that. We ordered chicken joy.
And then he was like, oh yeah, I got promoted, that's why I'm here at Eagle Rock. Man, that's dope. And my mom was like, oh, that's cool. And he was just like, oh, and he didn't make his pay. I'm like, what are you doing, man? He's like, I'm the manager, it's all good. I'm like, and he kept telling my wife, oh, your husband, he helped me so much, everything. I'm like, really? Like, I don't know. Like, we don't realize what we do.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And like
till years later,
and you don't realize how much you affected their mental health. Like we never gave them money or things. We were just there for them. We were provided them resources. We encouraged them to do things. We were always the ones telling them, oh, like, are you studying? Or like, if you need help with anything or need resources or you want to go to college, I can help you with that. Oh, you can do this. Oh, like, always kind of almost cheering them on.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna dwindle down therapy into something so simple as that. Yeah. Right. But a part of therapy is encouragement. It's safety, like there's so many aspects of it that people think about themselves as weak having to use it, but in reality, like it's something that's like so simple and so important. And I could have a therapy session with a person who is, let's say, like mandated and because they're convicted of child abuse. There are sessions where I'll be quiet that whole entire session
because they're talking talking,
and the first word out of their mouths when they came in was, I don't think I need to be here because I don't think what I did was wrong. And then boom, they'll go. Not because they're trying to like take up the whole session, because as they're speaking, they understand this is a safe space. And then they're able to
like
open up about things. Is it like the first
time they've ever said these things out loud?
Yeah, like I'll have like grown Filipino men like just cry in front of me, And I've literally and I've only had to say like maybe three sentences. Because it'll go from like, I don't think I need to be here. The only reason I'm here because the judge said this, but I feel bad about it. And I'll be like, why'd you feel bad? Oh, well, I don't really feel bad, but I guess. And then it'll lead to things. And the next thing will be like, oh, so why do you feel that way? I'm literally saying three prompting sentences that are, USC or not USC, but like, like programs will tell you like how to get people to go, and they'll take it over. It just shows you how much people need it and when they don't even want it,
because they keep all of it inside.
Yeah. And Filipinos, not the worst, but Filipinos are,
it's what we know,
are like have that so much, like just so bottled up.
It's the hiya thing. It's the shame.
It's shame. There's religious aspects about it. There's cultural aspects, right? Like cultural competency has only been introduced into social work and into therapy like probably in the last like 30 to 40 years, right? That's when people really, with like the big migration of like Asians from like the 60s. Cultural competency it's still new to social work, right? So I know what you guys were saying, like it's hard to find someone you can relate to, understand your story.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's getting better. It's getting a lot better, That's
good. So, because my cousin is a marriage family therapist, and so she's the one that I would go to for a lot of these things. And I remember she had told me that like SEPA had recruited her hard back in the day because she's Filipina, she speaks the language, and she's a marriage family therapist. And like that was like therapy unicorn, because there weren't that many people like that in the late 90s, early 2000s.
No, there's not. I mean, Asians in social work is barely
There's
gone
barely
up.
any.
Like in the 80s, there was like also in all USC in the 80s, there was maybe like 15 of them in a social work program.
That's it.
There's a small number. Like this, Ernalyn Navarro, she was like an old school Caba head from UCI. Like she went to UCI in like the 80s, and then she went to USC social work program in the 80s as well, the late 80s.
Damn.
So she was telling me like Filipinos. There's maybe like 5 or 10 Filipinos max, you know, and in the Asians, there's maybe like I don't know,
15.
something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But it just shows you how much it's grown, and like I've met her at so many alumni events for USC and for UCI.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy how like people could follow that same path, but it just shows you like it's needed. Like Filipinos need people that they can trust and that they feel connected to, you know. And so I mean, and me as a male in social work, it's the same thing.
You're also
like,
a unicorn, right?
basically like I get all the males, I get you know, and then even the females who don't want to, you know,
They
work
don't
with
wanna-
males. Eventually, there are times, oh, you know, she would like to speak to you now. I'm like, well, I'm not in her assigned therapist,
Yeah.
but they need to change, you know, like, or like I'll help another therapist kind of adjust that client to interacting with males again. So again, like with Asians and Filipinos, like there's so many different aspects of our lives that are basically considered post-traumatic stress. Migration is but the result of migration from another country, it's probably like one of the biggest factors in post-traumatic stress.
So I read about something a long time ago when I brought it up to my therapist about the transference of trauma. And I brought it up to her because of my life experience. So like my parents, they experienced martial law. And so my parents experienced martial law. My grandparents experienced World War II. And so I brought it up to my therapist at the time, like, I really think there's something to the transference of trauma, like in lineage, because a lot of the anxiety that I felt and anger, I didn't know what it stemmed from. And then I would realize like my parents, like they're really angry. Why are they angry? And I feel like it's a trauma from whatever experiences they had with immigrating to this country, because like they could have spent their entire lives in the Philippines, but they chose to come here. That's hard. And then like my grandparents with World War II, like my grandparents escaped Manila in a boat with 2 children. And they went to the provinces. And so they left their life. Like they had a life, but they left, and then one of my uncles actually passed away, the one they hit. And so like that trauma there's no way it disappears, right? Like generation,
Right.
like those are stories that are told, and you're like, and so for me, like when my Lola was experiencing Alzheimer's and I had to witness her go through that, I would see her hide the silverware because she thought that the Japanese were coming. And I was like, it's 30, 40 years later, and she still had that fear in her bones. And there's no way that like, I was like, Lola, it's okay. And she didn't even know who I was. Like she kept calling me my mom's name because I look like my mom. And I was just like, Lola, like we have to put this back. Like, how are we going to have dinner? Like there's no more 4 cents foods. You put them all in your room. Like you were hiding them. And I feel like that's the instance, right? Like my Lola should have gone to therapy. Like they should have,
sure.
she should have talked about that experiences, but no one in the Philippines talks about that. Like we didn't talk about that at all.
Right.
And it's the shame.
Do you, you know, when you talk to clients, do you bring in, the larger kind of issues of like racism and kind of migration and classism that really affect, some of the clients' lives? Like, how do you introduce that kind of stuff to them?
I usually don't bring in like classism and things like that, just because that would be really general for them. Like a lot of times, like when working with like particularly like the population we're working with, like their personal stories will lead into like what we're going to talk about, but a lot of the personal stories are similar, like a culture of distress, or like we'll have a lot of like clients coming in who like met their spouse online, and then now they're experiencing domestic violence, you know? So I will talk about aspects about like safety, right? Like to have an immediate result, like, you know what, like meeting people, meeting people from online or talking stuff like that, how to address that and be like, that may not be the safest thing. Do you feel like it's worth that, meeting someone compared to, meeting someone who's dangerous, like there's positive and negatives about meeting someone online, right? Yeah, especially if you're coming from another country, you never met that person, and now you're coming over to this country specifically to be with that person. So we'll have to go over things like, like cultural patterns, like what's the cultural norms here and the cultural norms there, and how can I better equip you to handle these type of stress while you're living here. So, but the overarching like classism and like racism, that's really hard. That would be like long-term therapy. Like if I was seeing a client for maybe like 2 years or maybe something like that, and they wanted to be consistent, then I could talk about stuff. If it's really like, if I feel like it's something that's really affecting them, like if they're going to job interviews and they're coming in, oh, this person got the job over me, and it was probably because of this, or like, he was white, or he was born here and I wasn't, like, then I could go into like identity issues, like, okay, how do you, like, tell me about your upbringing, like when did you migrate here? Those are the type of things I'd have to like assess first, and then I'd address it. But if I didn't feel like it was needed during an assessment, then I wouldn't.
So like if someone was, like a male was expressing like machismo and they didn't want to kind of talk about things, you never talked about like issues about like kind of the sexual politics of machismo with them?
No.
Not in like kind of heavy terms, but like in light terms.
So if someone came in and they had classic signs of machismo, like hyperaggression, I wouldn't. The first thing I ask them is, tell me about how you grew up.
Yeah.
So
open-ended question.
Open-ended question that the target root causes. And then after all that, maybe I'd go into like, I would never use the overarching term like, do you notice in your community there is a lot of machismo?
Because that's like an academic or clinical question.
Because trust me, they would get to the point where all I have to do is say 3 sentences and be like, all my uncles acted this way. This is why I do it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure their grandparents did it this way. So I'd be like, oh, so you mean like, your whole family, maybe like even like your extended family, everyone who in the area you lived in acted like this? Yes, everyone. So I'd be like, oh, so you mean your whole community? Like this is kind of where you feel comfortable with. Exactly. That's why it's okay, because everyone does it. So instead of using the word,
it's like a guided way.
Exactly. Because they don't want to hear like anything. They don't want to hear anything academic. They don't want to hear any isms.
Yeah.
They want to, like you said, like they want to connect with me. They don't want to feel like they're connecting with a professor,
Because it'll seem, for the lack of a better word, like uppity in terms of like the language that you're using with the client.
Or just non-personal. Like the whole, like probably like your initial goal in any therapeutic session is to create rapport, So if you don't have rapport, or if you lose that rapport, it's so hard to get back. And with Filipinos in general too, man, Filipinos want to feel comfortable. They want to feel like engaged with someone who they could embrace, I mean, it's not sad, but like it makes it difficult that Filipinos want to be with other Filipinos because there's not that many of us in the mental health field. And there are a lot of great therapists who are not Filipino, but I'm sure that they would do just as a good job.
Yeah.
It's
a trust issue.
Yeah, it's a trust though, and like with Filipinos, like when they're with other Filipinos, there's an automatic trust which can be positive and negative. Because not all therapists are good either. Like, there's some shitty therapists.
Do you think it's like the kaibigan, kapwa-tao, like the kababayan aspect of it? So like if you're a Filipino therapist, they'll be like, oh, you're Filipino, so I'm more open to share in a session like that.
Yeah, or they feel like you're gonna give them extra, like, oh, you're Filipino, so
discount.
I'm gonna get a even better session. I'm like, no,
you're gonna heal me right away.
Yeah, like you have other tools you're not gonna use with other people, but with me, you're gonna bring them out. Huh? Nope, these are the same crayons as the other person used.
Wink, nudge.
How do you practice self-care? Like we were talking about all those things. Like, what do you do? Like, do you see a therapist to process a lot of the things that you do as a social worker?
Well, we
or do you have a debrief with your?
We debrief a lot with like my coworkers. Yeah. So that's, luckily, okay, it's both ends. Like, luckily, I've become very comfortable in the situation I'm in, where I feel very used to the clients I'm seeing, and even new clients are coming with similar situations. But sometimes I feel like super desensitized. Like now I'll hear stories. I'm like, nothing bothers me. I'm told you, like, oh, that happened to you. I'm like, I'm really sorry that happened to you. It's like so robotic, and sometimes I feel bad.
Yeah. My cousin, who's another cousin who's a therapist with at-risk youth, he kind of gets that way. Like he like when you tell him like all these like fucked up things, he's like, yeah.
And I feel bad. And my friends will tell me stories about their life, and like, oh, they'll want to tell me stuff. And my first reaction is, in my head, I'm like, that sucks. But I don't want to be a dick. And so I'm just like, yeah, that sucks.
It's a fucked up thing. Like, I went to Target. It was supposed to be on sale, and they didn't charge me the sale price. What the hell's up with that?
Or even worse things. Like, oh, man, my daughter talked back to me today. Man, I can't believe it, the first time ever. I'm in my head, it's like, man, you're lucky. Talk to you. I've seen worse. But, my therapeutic face comes on. I'm like, you know what? Tell me what happened, Which something I don't want to do, but... with my wife, oh man, it's over. Like if she tells me something and I even respond in even a way she thinks that like I'm treating her like one of my clients.
Did she go off?
She's like, I'm not one of your clients. Stop
Good
trying
job,
to psychoanalyze me. I'm like, I'm not trying to psycho. See, that's the messed up part. Like
you have a stigma of you.
Yeah, right. When I'm just trying to talk in a way where I'm like, I'm trying to be as neutral as possible. What happened? And like, oh, do you I'll say things like, but I'm not trying to be a therapist.
Yeah.
I feel like
you actually want to know what happened.
And like, like whatever field you're in, right? You're going to take aspects of it and add it into your dialogue, right?
Yeah.
Right. So my dialogue has adjusted, and sometimes she doesn't get that, where if I say, and she says, oh, my coworker, man, she's harassing me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, what did you do? And she'd be like, what does it matter? I'm like, all right, shit, I get it. So you just want me to sit and listen? She's like, exactly, sit and listen.
Just be on my side, man. Just be on my side.
And I'm sure you guys have that with your parents. Like your parents will probably walk in on some days and they're just pissed and just want to talk. And you're just thinking like, okay, I can do two things. I can just take it and let them talk and let them vent. And even if I want to do something and say and insert my opinion, that might not be the best idea. So I'm going to let them go.
That took a long time to learn. And I still am learning that lesson.
Oh, you got to learn. Every Filipino should learn a lesson.
Yeah.
Because escalation in the Philippine community is like crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
It shoots up real quick.
Yep.
Yeah, Filipinos go to 0 to 100 really, really fast.
And they don't even remember the cause of the argument, but it happens because we don't know how to express ourselves or take criticism in a way that's constructive, right?
There is no such thing as constructive criticism.
Right? Like it's so, like you get scolded for speaking up, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're trying to do a positive thing, which is messed up. That can mess up with a child's psyche.
Yeah.
Do your friends and family kind of go to you because you are a therapist?
I wouldn't say that they go to me. If anything, they know what not to say to me. They know
what is something not to say to you?
Well, they know not to open up things if they don't want to hear my opinion.
Because you're gonna break it down.
Yeah, like if my friend says, "Oh, I met this guy online. We went on a date and we made out, but he hasn't called me back. I don't know why." I'm like.
Like, don't tell Ernie.
and I'm like,
you're crazy.
And I'll be like, tell me more. What happened? Tell me exactly what happened. I say, oh no, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm like,
because they're gonna say something like, well, we met at a bar, we had one drink, and then I went to the car, and then we just made out.
Yeah, or like, yeah, his profile looked cool, so he must have been cool. I'm like, no, he probably. What the fuck does that mean? It's like like they know, like if they don't want to hear my opinion, then don't just tell me something. Like, if you want to just vent to me. That's hard for me to do, even though I'll allow it. But then it's like, like,
yeah,
I hear that shit all day at work. So even my wife knows.
Yeah, it's kind of, because if you hear it all the time, you're just gonna be like, whatever. Like, I'm sure Mike doesn't want to hear me talk about students all day because I don't know. He's shrugging his shoulders. Well, I don't want to hear about policy all day. Okay, Mike? I'm just kidding. I don't know. He doesn't really talk about that at work, but at home. But yeah.
What would you have? What advice would you have for somebody who is trying to seek therapy, but is at that point where they don't know, or like they're hesitant? Like, what would be your advice for them?
I would say I mean, obviously, I would say attempt it. You know, like find a like a therapist that you feel like you'd want to try. Well, that's kind of hard to say because you won't know because you don't know who these people are. I would say just find the resources, and if you have insurance, talk to your insurance. If you have like Kaiser or you have whatever kind of insurance you have, find out what your insurance covers so you have to pay for it and try it out. If you don't like that therapist, don't look at it like, oh, I tried that one, I have to go to that one. You don't. You can go to any therapist you want. You can try different ones. You can ask them about their background, look them up, you know, ask them what they specialize in. Some therapists specialize in art therapy. Some specialize in talk therapy.
I've done referrals. So like my therapist I thought was really great. So I referred her to a few of my friends. So, and then a couple of them did go. Also, it's just a matter of resources because there are a lot of times where I would talk to somebody and they were just like venting their frustration, like a Filipino venting their frustration about like X, Y, and Z. And so it's just like, well, if you're complaining about being a caregiver, there are group sessions that you can, you can have that shared experience. So like you have all this anxiety or all these issues or frustration as being a caregiver. Well, there are these support groups that you can go to. And then you just give them the link or whatever, like the resources. And if they go, they go. Great for them. But like when you're in like a helper profession, it's like leading a horse to water. You can't force them to go. Yeah. So you have to it's a matter of like giving resources and then like letting go. Because if they don't want the help, then there's nothing you can do. Like they have to live with themselves and how they are.
So in the point of letting go, have you ever kind of had a client who you kind of stopped seeing and then they attempted to hurt themselves or suicide or anything like that? Or I know I don't have to mention any names.
Yeah. I mean, luckily I have not.
Okay.
You know, but a lot of my coworkers and people like who've been in the field longer, you know, like a lot of their clients will stay with them for like decades.
A long time.
Uh-huh.
You know, because certain issues just it's like their maintenance has to be maintained throughout, right? So like when you end therapy with an individual, you go through a certain like checklist.
Yeah, you're supposed to do like an exit.
Yeah, like an exit. Well, you do your own individual therapeutic checklist. Like, okay, have I given them the resources to get more help if they need it? They understand how to maintain like their level of mental health, right? Have I helped them address or like address any of the triggers, you know, have to help them like be aware of the triggers that might trigger like their break in their mental health. There's all these different things you have to do before you say you exit with someone or you close with somebody that are pretty important, you know. So luckily I've never had to experience that, but I could see that it could happen easily, especially depending on the individual situation and like what type of trauma like the individual's going through.
Because I imagine it's kind of like it's pretty much what you said earlier is building a relationship with somebody. And so I don't doubt that there's folks who've gone through the same person for like 10 years, especially if you find the right one for you.
I think I was with my therapist for probably like 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing. Like you go to you see your doctor like for physicals. You go to the dentist for cleaning. It's like it's the same. And like I know we were talking about like a lot of people go to therapy or a lot of people use different things as therapy, right? And like you know, talking to your friends can be helpful. Talking to your family can be helpful, but it's never going to compare to a therapist. You know, because it's like the number one reason why you never treat people you have relationships with. There's too much personal contact. It's hard to be objective. But man, for people who really feel like, oh, I'm just going to talk to my friends about it and then they can help me out. I hope a lot of Filipinos realize like, if you feel that strong need where like, I need to talk to somebody, you might as well let it be a professional who has the resources and tools.
Yes.
You know, because if your car broke down, you wouldn't talk to your homie who has no idea how to fix a car. Hey, bro, like my car broke down. Your bro, that sucks. I'll pick you up.
You want to talk to my mechanic?
Yeah, exactly. You know, like just like, dude, I've tried to convince my dad to go to some type of anger management therapy because he's had issues where he's about to get down with like our neighbor. Like a common occurrence, but he, you know, it sucks because Filipinos gone to that stage, especially older ones, where like they feel like there's no change in the horizon. Like, I am who I am. Nothing's gonna change it.
Oh my God,
But
preaching to the choir. I've had that experience where my dad got so angry that like he would, when I was a kid, he told me a story that like he was so angry he like bust out his gun on someone.
And it's not even,
it's not like flashing, but he was like, I needed to have it on me just in case. And I was like, I hear that, like, I was a kid when those experiences happened, and I hear that, and I'm like, just in case what? Like, you would have gone to jail. I would have not had a dad. And I've said that before. Like, I wouldn't have had a dad, like, if you had done what you thought you could do. And I feel like it's a lot of the old mentality. Like, in the Philippines, you could have taken care of your problems that way.
Right.
But you probably would have just died.
And even here, that like you said with the transference.
Yeah.
Like, instead of, so when your dad gets mad at, because your boss like gave him a tongue lashing, right?
Yeah.
Instead of yelling at his boss, he's gonna go yell at his wife and yell at his kids.
Yeah.
So it's like a endless cycle with especially with Filipinos, who have trouble expressing themselves, and we're a lot of Filipinos are in the service field, so there's high stress, high anxiety all the time in a lot of the work we're doing, and it stems into the family, which creates a cycle because, like you said, like you notice like when you're 5, like, damn, my dad is pissed right now,
Yeah.
and he just got home and I'm just doing homework and he's mad about like the texture of the rice, like I didn't even cook the rice. Sorry, I didn't put enough water. Shit. Like it's something we need to address.
Yeah.
But then another thing is there's not a lot of Filipino therapists, or kind of,
There isn't.
right?
But there are a lot of therapies that target like things like migration and a culture of stress and anger. So even though the person providing the therapy isn't Filipino, but the modality they're going to give you is targeting toward whatever you think you need help with, and it's going to take into your. And nowadays, therapists are going to take into your cultural background into consideration.
Yeah. And I'm sure like us as Filipinos, Filipino Americans, it's a similar story if what other Southeast Asian you are. Like if you're Vietnamese American, Cambodian American, I'm sure there's not as many therapists or social workers out there. Even if you're Latino, I don't know if there are that many.
Well, there are a lot more now, but like in anything, right?
Yeah.
But like to find like therapy in Vietnamese or Thai, it's pretty hard.
Oh yeah. So if you are job security,
Seriously.
go into social work, go into therapy.
Yeah, seriously. If you have any other skills in like foreign language, dude, you'll get hired so fast.
Oh, I wish I knew a foreign language.
Well, if you could do therapy in a foreign language,
yeah.
Can't just say hello.
Okay, well, thank you, Ernie, for being our guest, our second guest on
Thank
this
you so
Filipino
much.
American Life. Oh, wait. I have a soundboard. I have one. It's here. Hold on. I actually downloaded it. It's called MLG soundboard. Here.
What's that?
Air horn sonata.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Air horn sonata. It's awesome. But yeah, thank you for being our guest.
Thanks,
Do you have anything to plug? Do you have any things that you want to like tell people to go check out and support you, whatever you do?
Well, my agency is called the Asian Pacific Women's Center. So if there is any people who are looking for services, particularly if you're experiencing like domestic violence, sexual assault, and like you're having trouble discussing it, go to our website, www.apwcla.org, and we're able to help you out. Just want someone to talk to or someone to discuss it with. Even if you're unsure, you're like, oh, I wanted a date, something happened and I'm not sure if that was okay, we can help you process those type of things. So feel free, check out our website, and then
Say that website one more time.
www.apwcla.org. So Asian Pacific Women's Center, Los Angeles.
We'll post it on the website too.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
Any other plugs?
Any other plugs?
I feel like I should thank some people because I forgot earlier. Because you guys said I didn't have anybody to thank, but no, I actually want to say thank you to Jessica Ceballos, who posted this Filipino American Life and blasted it to a bunch of her friends, and Angela Babcock. So friends of mine.
Oh, yeah, Angela Babcock and Adrian Segura, another non-Filipinos who listen to our podcast.
There's been a cool group of folks. And I also wanted to thank Joseph Serrano, who I've been emailing with. He's going to be in the DuPage. If you're in the DuPage County of Illinois, he's going to be in Comic-Con to do...
Cool.
I know. He's doing his dissertation on... Check this out. He's doing his dissertation on like comic book heroes and how that relates to kind of like morality and stuff like that. So he's using kind of like that aspect of what he's known all his life into his therapy sessions. He's getting his doctorate in clinical psychology in Chicago.
Awesome.
So
Where's DuPage County?
I don't know. I just looked it up, but it's somewhere in
Probably
Illinois.
in Illinois.
Wheaton, Illinois, County of DuPage.
I don't know. I don't know geography.
But that's kind of cool because I like
one
comics.
Wheaton. Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton.
I'm plugging Color Your Troubles Away because it's June and it's Pride Month, and I'm partnering with API Equality Los Angeles. So I am looking for queer LGBT themed coloring sheets. So we will have those on Tuesday, June 28th. It's 7 to 9 p.m. at the Park's Finest at 1267 West Temple Street, Los Angeles, California, 90026. Check it out. Also, I want to also plug Disco Manila because it's in August, but we're going to continue to plug that. It's August 13th. Is it August 13th? Y'all remember?
Yeah.
August 13th? Yeah. Like, wait, I have
Saturday, August 13th.
Saturday, August 13th at Grand Performances, which is 300 South Grand. So check that out. Our first podcast guest, Joel Keyson, is coordinating that. So yeah, check that out. Thank you for everybody who's listened. Thank you for everybody who subscribed. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Just look for This Filipino American Life, or if you search Filipino American, it'll come up. Also subscribe or follow us on Mixcloud because we'll post it there. Our website is thisfilipinoamericanlife.com. If you have your own stories about mental health or therapy, you can email us at thisfilipinoamericanlife@gmail.com. Gmail.com.
Pew, 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 pew.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for all the love and the likes. We are here to talk more, and we know this was a really heavy subject, but we wanted to address it because it affects our community, and we believe it's important. Thank you again. Thanks.